Hey all, Trip here. Now I don't know how I managed to pull this off, but somehow I got an invitation for a personal tour of the Harley-Davidson Cage. Now what is the Cage, you ask? Well, it's a room of extremely historically valuable Harley-Davidson motorcycles that sits atop the Harley-Davidson Museum in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And the only way the average Joe is ever going to get a look in this room is through a locked door several feet away.
Trip, I'm Paul James.
Paul James, and
PR.
what do you do? PR?
I'm PR manager for Harley-Davidson.
And here we have
Bill Jackson, Archives Manager. Welcome, Trip.
So we have got the brain trust here, folks. We've got two guys. If they don't know what's going on, Lord help us, because no one does.
This is it.
This is the infamous Cage.
Absolutely.
Maybe just more famous than infamous.
Infamous. Now, I didn't see you guys put like a high security card or
I just
put
did.
a punch.
Yeah, you missed it.
I missed it. Dang it.
Yeah.
I told you I was going to blur that part out, but I was going to see it
a
first.
retina scanner. He had to,
And the reason they call it the Cage, folks, is everybody gets to come up to this part and rattle the cage or rattle the door, and all they get to do is look in, but they can't come in. Obviously, this is a very special room. I mean, you can just one glance, and there's some amazing stuff in here. So what type of people would normally have access to this room? And
Just the archives and curatorial staff, and then a few from security, a few from our visitor experience team. It is a very special space. You know, you can still get chills after all the years of coming into this room and appreciating the practice of saving all of these bikes. Because had they not done that, would this museum have even been possible? First of all, it would have been prohibitively expensive, because this is like getting into the late 2000s, 2004, 5, 6, 7. The collection is just here. In fact, it was a CEO all the way back in the 1970s who would look at this collection and say, we've got to do something with this.
Wow, how many bikes are in here all total, do you think?
At any given time, it can be 330 to 40. It just all depends on the week or the day. Things kind of move into exhibit and out. Things have come out of exhibit. Our newest exhibit actually are bikes all on loan. Actually, almost entirely all bikes that are completely on loan to us from private individuals. So, and other museums. You know, it's not just about our collection. There's some great stuff that people want to show here.
So how does this work? You come up, and are these on rollers, or is it a forklift that comes and gets them?
And the building was built to be an archives and museum, which means you can set the rails right into the floor. And yeah, it's the only thing special about it to us is it's black and orange, but this is an industrial grade mobile compacting system. And then the bikes are on pallets, and they're forklifted on and off, and then depalletized. And it's very easy. And you may have noticed there's not a chronological order, there's not an order of sizes, but it's the computer age. Let's let the computer do the work. They are set by height, so the really short guys are up on the tall.
All the sporties up there, huh?
Top sections. Bikes with windshields get more space. And you know, there's a system, there's end caps with a letter system that tells us what letter each carriage is. And then there's bays and shelves and all that kind of thing. So it's very easy and quick to get in here when we need to.
So these bikes are here for study, or for what's the purpose of having all these bikes here? What is your use for them? What are you going to be?
Well, it's great that you mentioned the word study, because our product development people do come here to do research. When they were working on what became the 2018 Softail models, they came here to study the bikes in depth, Sportsters and touring models, exhaust systems. There was a team that came years ago just to look at really old exhaust systems.
To see what would give us that old Harley sound, or is it from more of a design standpoint that they look at? Or
all of the above.
Wow.
With the originality of the collection, they can come and say, well, what did the actual Pepper Red, as it was called, for 1956, what did it actually look like? Now, with this collection, hardly ever having had sunlight on these bikes, the paint is going to be in fantastic shape.
It is, yeah, definitely.
And there's people out there who could reproduce that red in really just a fantastic way, but you know, just having the original can't be beat. So
now, are all the bikes in here stock, or
no?
Will you have some highly modded bikes, or
highly modded? They're way up high. Well, one's not way up high. There's a dragster from the 1990s.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
built by an employee. There's another dragster way up there.
Do I see the XR1000 there? Is that it?
VR 1000?
Oh, it is what?
VR.
VR 1000.
Road racer.
So
This
fans-
was really up until now the baggers. This was your last hurrah in racing, wasn't it?
No.
No.
We
No?
raced Sportsters. We raced the XR 750 in flat track racing. We raced the XR 1200 in the AMA Pro Series all the way up till 2014.
And fans of Moto America would recall, and if they know their history, would recall back in the days of the AMA Superbike series. So that's where these were raced. But again, racers can be among the lowest numbers. So we try to make sure to retain things like XR 750s. And you name it, you know, King of the Baggers, we're already talking about which one or two of those bikes will come into the collection.
We have a King of the Baggers fan over there.
Yes. I just read they were thinking about getting into Europe for some of
We'll
them.
race in Europe next
Yeah.
year.
You know, it always seems that when you're into motorsports or motor vehicles, that racing is what carries a brand. And I wanted Harley to get back into racing in a major way in some form or fashion. And personally, I think that'll be a great carrier for the brand. And it's kind of like a university having a football team. It's the same thing. If someone who makes motor vehicles has a...
They're definitely feeling it. Moto America increase their attendance. It's the King of the Baggers is the most social media viewed racing that they do of all the classes. So yeah, it's super exciting.
Well, with vintage racers, one story I've often told is way up high here is a 1960 KR Racer, and this has happened from time to time. Our visitor experience staff calls me at my desk or others and says, I've got a woman on the phone, she says she's the daughter of Brad Andrus, and they start yelling, put her on, put her on. And this bike was sitting in a museum in San Diego.
And he was obviously the guy that rode that thing to victory a few times.
That is the 1960 Daytona 200 winner. So
Wow.
when a bike like that has that specific history,
And you
I
can
mean,
get additional provenance on the phone.
absolutely, and you see that on auctions on TV. You know, people who watch those auctions. This isn't just any race car or race bike. This one specifically won. That just brings so much more value, and you know, those are the stories we love to tell.
What do we have, the chromed out
Yep.
sort of racing bike with the incredibly big rake up top?
That is a famous dragster from the 1960s and 70s called the Super Sportster. And the gentleman who built it was working for a dealership in Columbus, Ohio at the time. And he wanted to respond to another drag race team that had a Triumph, a drag racing Triumph, that guy called the Hog Slayer because he didn't like Harley. He said, no Harley's ever going to beat me. And Tom Reiser, the builder of the Super Sportster, said, challenge accepted.
Think twice, buddy.
Yep.
How long did it take him to beat him?
I forget the actual, it was real early in 1969, and I think one of the races they broke the ETA record. So, and just the day that Tom himself brought it here for delivery, he's just telling these amazing stories. After that, I got us a video camera because I'm like, when people come here, you know, don't let them leave without, you know, telling these
that
great
story.
stories, because I'm thinking somebody should be recording this. But we wrote it all down. I went back to my desk and wrote notes. But like an
So
old school.
on air, okay, so out of the bikes here, let's say there's 300 bikes in here. What percentage of them are on loan, and what percentage would you guys own?
The vast majority in this room at any given time are company owned.
Company owned, okay. How long will a bike stay in here and you go, oh, well, we've got 50 more bikes that we'd rather study a little bit more closely and we don't have the room? Do they go to a secondary museum, kind of like the Smithsonian does, and you bring those in, or is it a rotating? Do you ever put any of these out on the floor?
Yes. Now, on like a 1 or 2 or 3 basis, they're going to go into temporary exhibit or longer term exhibit. We just built in some room for growth. And actually sitting in that rack over there is our 2023 acquisition. And yep. And so
No Highway King or Fast Johnny?
Well, he said the latest 2023.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I got you.
Well, and there's another 2023 that's due to come here, which is anniversary, because whenever an anniversary
Right.
edition bike comes out, the practice has been to get
I
at least
really,
one.
really like the color scheme of this year's
it's lovely,
anniversary,
yeah, stunning.
particularly on the Heritage. I just think beats the band.
And the new CVOs, I had a chance to ride one, and it's great.
Do you have a favorite bike in here?
In here, I mean, it depends on the day. And we were talking. No, seriously, we were talking about the Super Sportster, and sometimes it's the story or the experience that came with it.
Today's Thursday. I'll just remind you of that. Okay. You can pick one.
In the museum, we were talking about the Knucklehead. That bike can still give me chills after all of these years. Sometimes it's not a bike. I remember the time that the son of Arthur Davidson called, He was 94 at the time, and he had a fantastic sense of humor, and he said, "I've got some junk." That was his word. And I said, "Yeah, we know who you are." And I sat in his dining room with him and his wife, and he said, "I want the Harley Museum to have this, and I want you to have that." And it was like the passports that Arthur used to go overseas to recruit dealers. I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" We were able to get him here about 2 years later. Just a fantastic. We caught him on video.
This is an AMF era product, right? Aramici, was that it? Or
Well, Ermaki.
Ermaki, okay.
And so this is the era where dirt bikes, as we understand them now, off-road bikes are coming to be more
This is
like
like
modern era.
late
Yeah.
60s to 75, 76,
Exactly,
kind of that era. That's actually when I got in.
Those go all the way back to the 1960s, where Harley bought, it's essentially an Italian motorcycle company that was already producing bikes, partly to get into the European market, but then also let's sell them here in the U.S. Why not? Because it
Exactly.
was the next big thing coming.
Bike looks brand new. The
That's
only thing
another-
that gives it away is the drum brake in the front. Oh my goodness, what do we have up top there?
That's our barn find. The thought was to acquire a bike that just...
The C.H. Lang's barn?
No, I wish. Or maybe it is. We'll do research on it and pull them in. But an example of a bike that just literally sat probably in a barn or a chicken coop or something all those years and just rusted to heck. But yeah, so it's not always about this pristine, perfect factory. We were talking about racing bikes a minute ago. We want them as raced, for example. In fact, in some cases, we actually had to ask our racing department, please don't clean it up and make the bodywork look perfect. Or King of the Baggers. We would want a King of the Baggers bike to come here as raced, ideally. Please don't make it perfect.
So you get a phone call, you're sitting at your desk, you get a phone call and someone says, "Hey Bill, I got this." What is the type of thing or the one thing that people can call you up and say, "I got this, it's yours," that makes you the most excited of all?
Somebody calls and says, "I've got this set of notebooks with a bunch of equations in them and it says William S. Harley in them." That's hypothetical, but that's like, where do you live and can I come over right now? It just really all depends. You know, the earliest police bike in our collection is 1936, which is not to complain, but if somebody had a police Harley that was older and in great condition and said, "Hey, let's talk about this," absolutely. You know, what we don't do is say, we don't even want to hear about it or don't get back to people. If it's the one time you don't ask the questions, it's going to be the one that got away. First of all, we always ask questions. If they have photos, that's great. People will be surprised at how many things we're offered we already have. If they say, "I've got a 1961 Sprint," we say, "You know, we've already got one." We put you in touch with some other museums. We actually have a written list of criteria, things like originality, rarity.
What do we have up front here?
But this is the area where the bikes actually get worked on, and I'm careful not to say restored because I've just said, you know, before, we don't do restorations, but we don't need to. This bike used to be a bike that we ran on campus. This was part of what is called our sit-on gallery. We used to have bikes. We used to have antique bikes that people could sit on. Now it's all modern bikes, which actually was customer request. We were getting so many comments from people saying, "I would love to sit on bikes at the end of the museum experience, but I want to sit on new ones because that's what I'm excited about." And again, we built in some room for storage. This is our latest.
There's the new CVO.
Absolutely.
I got to tell you, I've never been a fan of either fairing of the Street Glide or the Road Glide, but now with the CVO, I love both fairings. I mean, my favorite fairing up until just a little bit ago was the Lowrider ST, and now I see these, and I've gone from, I really don't like the looks of. I'd own one, I'd ride one, but you know, and now I look at this, I just go, wow, I'd be all over that.
Again, we're doing exactly what the founders did. We'll never need to restore that bike. And taking good care of it is just something that's going to be part of our workflow. Just outside the cage there, you've got Elvis's bike.
Now, was that actually Elvis's, one of his bikes?
Yep. One of his very first motorcycles he ever owned.
I'm into sidecars. It's been my dream to own a bike with a sidecar forever. Maybe someday.
Yeah, so this is a 1920 J model. J was one of the mainstays of that period. It's twin, it's got a sidecar. We used to run this bike around campus once in a while for visitors just so you get that sense of what they looked like, sounded like, smelled like, because the old hot smell of hot oil, which is a great smell.
Now, the box with the switch, is that an add-on? Is that something that came with this bike originally?
That's a toolbox.
And then this is a beautiful
A
bike.
1928 J Model, and it's restored. And this is actually a Goulding sidecar, which was one of the really popular sidecars of the era.
That's a fiberglass sidecar, isn't it?
Yep. This just went recently to an event here in Milwaukee to kind of promote the museum. As mentioned, we used to let people sit on this bike, but those bikes got taken out so that people could experience the new stuff more.
And then over here is your work area. Is this where they bring bikes in if they need some major or
This is where a member of my team works.
preservation work, I guess?
Really, yeah, the phrases we use is preservation and conservation.
So you might knock off a couple of broken parts, try to replace those if there's
Exactly.
undue rust, maybe a little bit of
Fluids are
that.
purged, batteries removed. If there's minor replacement of parts needed, like you said, that's what will happen. Ideally, like it's a new old stock part.
And this is a Cervicar.
This is a 1955.
You have a semblance of a tool shop. Do you make any of your own stuff here? I see you've got a press and
Not really.
a drill, but
It's like with the work that goes in these bikes, the lighter the better.
and you're not doing any fabricating in here, obviously.
No.
Okay. All right. Well, this is an amazing room, guys. I've loved every second of being in here. Really appreciate the opportunity. I'm sure the people who see this video are going to feel the same way.
It's a cool place. It gives me the shivers every time.
Yeah, this is neat.
Stories, people. A lot of the bikes were never owned by anybody, but somewhere, think about this pre-war era Harley is in the middle of the rack.
Which one is that?
So this guy that's in, see where the V-rod is? It's in the middle. Middle row furthest back. What model is that, Bill?
What are we talking about?
The bomber tail gunner. So Bill can tell the story better than I can, but this bike right here.
Red 41 here.
That's a
Flathead.
Owned by
right here.
his senior year in high school, right? He put, how many miles did he put on his senior year?
Oh my gosh, it was over 20,000. So he got it as part of his high school graduation present, and he was living in Alabama. He went off to fight in World War II and was a tail gunner on a B-17, and exchanged letters with his girlfriend, who they agreed they were going to get married when he got home, and he didn't make it home like a lot of those guys. And so he and his crewmates lost their lives over Yugoslavia when they were shot down. So but we've got photos of him riding the bike and the correspondence that I was describing. So that's a great, it's like a collection that comes with the bike, which is something we really love.
They had a shrine basically for him where they had his leather jacket and all of his war materials and the letters he'd sent home and his motorcycle, and they kept it all those years.
Now, are those colored marbles that are adhered on the rear fender, or are those lights?
Those are studs.
That was obviously something he put on the bike, right?
Yep. Motorcycle dealers, Harley would sell them and other aftermarket companies. And when people started to get into the pure decorative side.
Yeah. Because there's a story of a guy, it's an amazing story and sad story that represents many veterans' experience that didn't make it home.
Right.
And there's his motorcycle. He loved it and he customized it. It's his.
A part of him is here in this cage.
Still alive.
All right, we're going to get to see the vault opened. Oh, I love that sound. Got to get those prison doors clanging shut. So, Bill, what bike do we have here again?
This is a 1956 model KH Harley-Davidson, but it's not just any KH. It is the one that was purchased by Elvis Presley.
The Elvis Presley?
The Elvis Presley.
Not Elvis Costello, but Elvis Presley.
Good distinction there. But this is believed to be only the third Harley he ever owned. He posed on this motorcycle.
Was that the famous one where he had his riding cap on and the black leather jacket, and he's kind of...
That cover.
Oh, there we go. That's it. And this is the bike.
So your viewers might know about the Enthusiast magazine. Elvis was on the cover of the Enthusiast sitting on this very bike.
That was Elvis's bike when he was
And
21.
56 is the year, as Elvis fans know, where he really took off. I mean,
Right.
he was famous at the beginning of the year, but by the end of the year, he was in the stratosphere as far as popularity. And he gave the bike to his friend, who took over the payments, and the friend kept the bike all those years, restored it, and then sold it to the company. So we're not out to get every celebrity Harley, But when you're talking Elvis Presley
Yeah.
and Harley, you just...
Now, I've also heard that Elvis bought and gave away dozens of Harleys throughout his life.
Supposedly, yes, and the same set of cars.
Cadillacs,
Yep.
particularly, I've heard. And what do we have down here? Hiding in the corner.
Library of engines.
And are these original these are all original stuff here?
Yep. There's gas tanks, engines. We usually try to keep up on the Key V twins. Something that's back in the museum is a whole room devoted to engine technology for Harley-Davidson.
All the racing fairings.
Yeah, those are VR1000 engines in the floor there with the carbon fiber heads.
Oh, wow.
Or valve covers, I should say.
I envy you guys. Well, Bill, I know you've got to get going. Your time is limited. I think you've got another meeting. Greatly appreciate your time, your knowledge. They were right. If Bill doesn't know it, no one will. Thank you so much for this tour.
Thanks for coming, Trip, and please come back again.
I'll be here, trust me. Wow, what a place. The Harley-Davidson Cage, or the Vault as some people call it. I learned an awful lot just being in that room for a few minutes. Some of those bikes and the stories behind them, simply amazing. And what is even more amazing, in my opinion, is that Harley-Davidson is putting forth both the effort and the money to preserve the stories of these amazing bikes. And special thanks to Bill Jackson, the Harley-Davidson archivist, who took us on the tour. Great job, Bill.
Have you subscribed to Trip on Two Wheels yet? Hey, what are you waiting for? Do it now.